President. This week, I know the presiding officer from Maryland is... excuse me, Mr.
If
President,
the senator would suspend?
I asked you to have sent to dispense with the quorum.
Without objection.
Even after they reminded me. Thank you, Mr. President. This week, for the 5th month in a row, and the presiding officer has been standing with us on this important issue, parents in Ohio and Maryland, all over the country, once again see $250 or $300, or if they have 2 children, $600 in tax cuts directly in their bank account. 90%, think about this, 90% of Ohio children are going to get this year will have at least a $3,000 tax cut, not a deduction. This is real money in people's pockets. 90% of Ohio families will get at least a $3,000 tax cut. That's if they have 1 child. If they have more, they will get a bigger tax cut. We know how hard parents work at your jobs, at raising your kids. Any parent knows how much work it is to take care of children, especially young children. It's gotten only harder and harder over the last year and a half. And I hear some of my colleagues, especially on that side of the aisle, say, you know, we've got to have work. They forget what hard work it is to raise children. And I watch what we were able to do in this. The chairman of the Finance Committee just walked in, Senator Wyden, and his leadership on this largest tax cut for working families in my lifetime. And so often we know hard work doesn't pay off. For over the past, think about the past few decades. Stock market went up, productivity went up, executive compensation's been stratospheric, but wages, essentially wages for most workers in this country have been flat. And you know how expensive it is to raise kids: health care, school lunches, diapers, clothes, school supplies, braces, sports fees, camp fees. The list never seems to end. And one of the biggest expenses for so many families is childcare. So parents feel like they're stuck. The more they work, the more expensive childcare gets. And one of the reasons that people haven't returned to the workplace as much as some academicians or some professors or somebody predicted, it's not because we were providing unemployment compensation. That just kept them alive. It's because they can't find affordable, accessible, safe childcare. So that's why parents feel like they're stuck. It's why we passed the child tax credit. As I said, the largest tax cut for working families ever. It's about finally making hard work pay off so you can keep up with the cost of raising a family. And one of the joys of this job, and I know that the Senator from Oregon, the Senator from Maryland share this because they do things like this, is we put on our website, what does the monthly child tax credit mean to you? We started this in July. We voted on it on this floor on March 6th. 5 days later, President Biden signed the law. We all went to talk to Secretary Yellen about getting these checks out quickly. July 15th, 4 months after we voted for it, not even 4, help me with my math, 3 months after we voted for it, these checks started showing up. And in my state, it was 2.1 million checks went out, 2.1 million individuals got this child tax credit, you know, 1 million some families, because obviously more than 1 child in a family in many cases. And then they got a check August 15th, September 15th, October, just this week, November 15th. We know it cut the cost, it could cut the rate of child poverty by 40%. We also know that it helped families with school expenses, with maybe putting a little bit money aside for Bowie State or Stark Community College in Ohio. Maybe it was just a way that families, I mean, we know how there are so many families that are really anxious at the end of the month. And maybe we don't talk to enough families like this around here, but families that are anxious at the end of the month, getting this $300 or $300, $600 check in the middle of the month relieves the anxiety so many families have just to pay the rent, because we know so many families that last week of the month cut back on food a little bit, cut back on, try to figure out a way to get through the month so they can pay their rent at the beginning of the next month. But so on this website, we ask people what this means to you. We just get the most wonderful stories. Lisa said tax cuts help me afford diapers and school supplies, and now we can put a little into starting a 529 college fund. I'm so exciting now we finally can save for education. Lynn from Columbus, it kicked in right at a time when kids' birthdays were happening, plus back to school shopping, and several unexpected vehicle repairs were needed as well. It's made a very helpful impact. You know what? The presiding officer, Senator Van Hollen, sits on the Banking Housing Committee with me. He knows that before the pandemic, 25% of renters in this country paid more than half their income in rent. And one thing goes wrong, your car breaks down, you get sick, your child gets sick, you miss a few days of work, and you can be evicted. This will stop that from happening in many cases. Jeff from Cincinnati said it helps him afford car insurance for a 17-year-old that's got a part-time job after school. The story we hear over and over is how expensive child care is, how parents use this money to afford child care so they can go back to work or maybe work more hours than they're working. Cece said the tax cut helps her pay for daycare. Daycare is the same amount as my mortgage payment for 4 days a week. This is so helpful, she said. Sarah said, it's been critical as I started my unpaid maternity leave at the end of July. I mean, we want people to be able to give birth and then stay with their child, their newborn, for a period of time. Many people in Baltimore and Cleveland and Portland don't have any kind of leave, and how important it is that they can maybe stay a little longer with a newborn child and bond with her or him. Courtney from Athens near the Ohio River said the CTC is slightly more than half the cost of part-time daycare tuition per month here. Much appreciated help getting kiddos back into child care and keeping my husband and me in the workforce. These tax cuts mean more parents can afford to work, can afford to keep up with the extra cost of raising kids. These tax cuts are fundamentally strip down everything else. It's about the dignity of work. All work has dignity. Whether you punch a clock or swipe a badge, whether you work for tips, whether you're in salary, whether you're raising children or caring for an aging parent, raising children is work. We never should forget that. Raising children is work. It's a hell of a lot more work than moving money from one overseas bank account to another, as this body falls all over itself over the years at giving tax cuts to rich people. Didn't stop Senator McConnell from rewarding the wealthiest CEOs and hedge fund managers and Swiss bank account holders. Well, we remember what happened. When they did their tax cut 4 years ago, everybody in ours, I mean, look at the difference. 4 years ago, they passed a tax cut. You could see, Mr. President, the lobbyists lined up in the hall outside Senator McConnell's office. 4 years ago, we passed a tax cut. Almost all Republicans voted yes, almost all Democrats voted no. 70% of that tax cut went to the richest 1%. Earlier this year, we passed the largest tax cut for working families everywhere. Everybody on this side voted yes. Everybody on that side voted no. I mean, whose side are you on? Apparently, we know that. Senator McConnell and his crowd, they're always for the billionaires. They're always for giving more tax cuts, while Senator Wyden and the Finance Committee are fighting for middle-class tax cuts. They then promised, and we all heard this, they promised these big tax cuts for billionaires would trickle down, and they'd hire more people and they'd pay higher wages and the economy would grow. Well, it didn't exactly work that way. They kept so much of it for themselves. They spent that money on stock buybacks, and we know what happened then. So the question is, do you want tax cuts for billionaires and corporations, or do you want tax cuts for working families? We want tax cuts for working families. So do Americans from all over the country, overwhelmingly from all kinds of backgrounds, from Chillicothe to Xenia to Springfield to Portsmouth to Ravenna, all over the country. Every single month now, we're showing parents and workers we're on your side. We'll not stop fighting to make sure parents' hard work pays off for years to come. The child tax credit, we will make it permanent. It may not be this year, but we will make it permanent. As Senator Wyden has said, it will become a lot like Social Security. It will be transformational. Americans will love it the way we Americans have gotten used to and depend on and love Social Security. It's part of who we are as a nation. I yield the floor.